What if I told you that one of the simplest habits in your everyday life, something as routine as reheating food, could be slowly sabotaging your health? It's a thought that might sound strange at first, but as we explore the biology of food and the way our bodies respond to it, you'll start to see that the true cost may not just be a matter of convenience or flavor. The science behind food reheating and its hidden dangers might just surprise you, and more importantly, could change how you approach the very meals you consume. We all love the comfort of leftovers, an efficient solution for busy lives. But what if that comfort is not without consequences? Today, we're diving into a subject that is too often overlooked, but carries profound implications for our long-term health: the hidden cancer risks associated with reheating certain foods. Understanding this isn't just about avoiding discomfort. It's about reprogramming our biology for resilience and longevity. After all, the choices we make today ripple out and shape the body we live in tomorrow. You see, our bodies are far more sensitive to the foods we eat than most realize. The mechanisms of food chemistry, particularly when exposed to heat multiple times, can trigger cellular stress, cause the breakdown of nutrients, and create harmful compounds. But there is hope. Science offers us insights on how we can protect ourselves and make more informed decisions. In this video, we're going to uncover 5 foods you must never reheat, explain why reheating them can significantly increase cancer risks, and most importantly, how you can avoid the danger with simple, science-backed steps. So whether you're someone who loves leftovers or has little time to cook fresh meals daily, stick with us, because today's conversation is about health, vitality, and giving your body the best chance to thrive for longer than you might have thought possible. Don't forget to hit that like button if this content resonates with you, and subscribe so you never miss our deep dives into natural health solutions. We'd love to know where our amazing community spans. Drop your city or country in the comments below. Now let's explore why reheating certain foods may not just affect your taste buds, but your long-term health. Let's begin with something deceptively simple, something many of us eat almost daily: protein-rich foods, particularly chicken. There's a quiet assumption we tend to carry. If food was safe the first time we cooked it, reheating it should be equally harmless. But biology rarely operates on assumptions. It operates on transformation. And when it comes to proteins, heat is not just a cooking tool. It is a molecular sculptor. When you cook chicken the first time, heat denatures its proteins. This is a normal and beneficial process. It unfolds tightly coiled amino acid structures, making them easier for your body to digest and absorb. But when you reheat that same chicken, especially at high temperatures or multiple times, something more complex begins to happen. The amino acids, those fundamental building blocks of life, start to degrade. Under repeated heat exposure, they can form compounds known as heterocyclic amines, or HCAs. These are not just theoretical risks. Research from institutions like the National Cancer Institute has shown that HCAs can bind directly to DNA, increasing the likelihood of mutations that, over time, may contribute to cancer development. Now pause for a moment and consider this. The very food you consume to nourish your muscles, to rebuild your body, may under repeated stress begin to generate compounds that challenge your cellular integrity. This is not about fear, it's about awareness. Think of protein like a beautifully folded origami structure. The first application of heat unfolds it gently, making it usable. But repeated heating? That's like crumpling and re-crumpling the same paper. Eventually, the structure is no longer functional. It becomes distorted, fragile, and in some cases, harmful. Have you ever noticed how reheated chicken sometimes tastes slightly off, a bit rubbery, perhaps even metallic? That's not just a culinary issue. It's a biochemical signal. Your senses are often the first line of defense, quietly alerting you to deeper changes occurring at the molecular level. So what can we do? Here's where we shift from knowledge to power, from observation to application. First, if you're preparing protein-rich meals like chicken, aim to cook only what you plan to eat within a short window, ideally one sitting, or within 24 hours if refrigerated properly. Second, if you must reheat, do so gently. Lower temperatures, shorter durations, and avoiding repeated cycles can significantly reduce the formation of harmful compounds. Think of it as warming, not re-cooking. Third, and this is a longevity tool I often emphasize, pair your proteins with antioxidant-rich foods. Vegetables like broccoli, kale, and bell peppers contain compounds that can help neutralize some of the oxidative stress induced by heat-altered proteins. In a way, you're creating a biological buffer, supporting your body's resilience at the cellular level. And finally, ask yourself a simple but powerful question the next time you reach for leftovers. Am I preserving convenience or compromising vitality? Because every small choice, every reheating cycle is not just a moment in your day. It's a signal to your biology, a message that either supports repair or accelerates wear. The goal is not perfection, it's alignment. Aligning your daily habits with the deeper intelligence of your body. And when you begin to see food not just as calories, but as information that shapes your cells, your genes, your future, you realize something extraordinary. Longevity is not built in grand gestures. It is built in the quiet, repeatable decisions we make every single day. Now let's turn to a category of food that many people consider the very definition of health: leafy greens. Spinach, celery, beets. These are foods we associate with vitality, detoxification, and nourishment, and rightly so. In their natural state, they are rich in nitrates compounds that, within the body, can support blood flow, enhance oxygen delivery, and even improve mitochondrial efficiency. But here's where biology introduces a subtle twist. When these nitrate-rich foods are cooked and then allowed to cool, and especially when they are reheated, a chemical transformation can occur. Under certain conditions, particularly with prolonged storage or repeated heating, nitrates can convert into nitrites and further into compounds known as nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are not benign. Decades of research, including findings supported by the National Cancer Institute and the World Health Organization, have linked these compounds to an increased risk of certain cancers, particularly those affecting the digestive system. So what happened? How does something so beneficial become something potentially harmful? The answer lies in context. Biology is not just about what you consume. It's about how, when, and under what conditions. A molecule that supports health in one environment can become disruptive in another. It's a powerful reminder that nutrition is dynamic, not static. Think of nitrates like raw clay. In their original form, they are full of potential, capable of being shaped into something useful. But when exposed to the wrong sequence of heat and time, That clay hardens into something rigid and less adaptable. The same substance, different outcome. Have you ever reheated spinach and noticed a slightly bitter or metallic aftertaste? That's not your imagination. That's chemistry revealing itself through your senses. So, how do we navigate this intelligently? First, if you're preparing nitrate-rich vegetables like spinach or celery, aim to consume them fresh or shortly after cooking. These foods are at their peak not just in flavor, but in biochemical integrity when they are not subjected to repeated heating cycles. Second, if you do have leftovers, consider eating them cold or at room temperature, perhaps as part of a salad. This simple shift can significantly reduce the risk of nitrosamine formation. Third, store these foods properly. Rapid cooling and refrigeration slow down the microbial and chemical processes that contribute to nitrate conversion. Time and temperature are your levers of control. And here's a deeper longevity tool. Diversify how you prepare your vegetables. Light steaming, sautéing once, or even consuming them raw in rotation preserves a broader spectrum of nutrients while minimizing risk. Variety, in many ways, is a form of biological insurance. Now let me ask you something. How often do we assume that healthy food remains healthy no matter what we do to it? This is where awareness becomes transformative. Because health is not just about choosing the right foods. It's about respecting the processes that govern them. It's about understanding that even beneficial compounds can cross a threshold, shifting from supportive to stressful depending on how we handle them. And if this insight is helping you see food in a new light, consider subscribing to the channel, because what we're building here is more than knowledge. It's a framework for living with intention, guided by science and shaped by curiosity. At the end of the day, your body is not simply reacting to what you eat. It's interpreting it, translating it into signals that influence inflammation, repair, and even gene expression. So the question becomes, are we giving our biology clear, supportive signals or confusing ones? Because clarity in the language of the body is where healing begins. Let's now shift our focus to something many of us have been told is essential for health fats, particularly healthy oils, olive oil, avocado oil, even certain seed oils in moderation. These are often celebrated for supporting heart health, brain function, and cellular integrity, and they do when treated with care. But here's where a critical distinction emerges. Not all heat is equal, and not all oils respond to heat in the same way. In fact, when oils are reheated, especially multiple times, they undergo a process known as lipid oxidation. Now, that may sound technical, but the concept is surprisingly intuitive. Imagine slicing an apple and leaving it exposed to air. Over time, it begins to brown. That browning is oxidation, a reaction with oxygen that alters the structure of the fruit. Something similar happens with oils, but instead of browning, they begin to break down into unstable compounds, aldehydes, lipid peroxides, and reactive oxygen species. These are not passive byproducts. They are biologically active molecules that can trigger inflammation, damage cell membranes, and accelerate the aging process at a cellular level. Research published in journals like Free Radical Biology and Medicine and studies from institutions such as the University of California have shown that oxidized lipids can contribute to a range of chronic conditions from cardiovascular disease to neurodegenerative disorders. So what does this mean in practical terms? It means that reheating oils, especially at high temperatures or for prolonged periods, transforms something beneficial into something potentially harmful. Have you ever reused cooking oil? Perhaps after frying or sautéing, thinking it's efficient, even resourceful? This is where we need to pause, because each cycle of heating doesn't just reuse the oil, it compounds the damage. The concentration of oxidized byproducts increases, and with it, the burden placed on your body's detoxification systems. Think of it like breathing clean air versus air filled with smoke. The source may be the same oxygen, but the quality determines the impact. So how do we work with this knowledge? First, avoid reheating oils whenever possible. Use fresh oil for cooking, especially if you're applying high heat. Oils like extra virgin olive oil are best used for low to medium el-harata, while more stable fats like avocado oil can tolerate higher temperatures, but still should not be reheated repeatedly. Second, be mindful of how food is stored and reheated. If a dish contains oils, reheating it multiple times can accelerate oxidation, not just in the oil itself, but in the entire meal. Third, incorporate antioxidant-rich foods into your diet. Compounds like polyphenols found in berries, green tea, and dark leafy vegetables can help counteract some of the oxidative stress caused by damaged fats. It's not a free pass, but it's a layer of protection. And here's a powerful mindset shift. Instead of thinking about fats as simply good or bad, begin to think of them as sensitive, responsive to environment, influenced by time, temperature, and exposure. Because in the world of biology, sensitivity is not weakness, it's intelligence. Your cells rely on lipids to build membranes, to communicate, to function. When those lipids are compromised, the effects ripple outward, subtly at first, then more visibly over time. So let me ask you, are the fats you consume supporting your cells or stressing them? Because longevity is not just about what you add to your diet. It's about what you preserve in its most life-supporting form. And when you begin to honor that distinction, you're no longer just eating. You're participating in the design of your future biology. Now we enter a category of food that feels almost harmless, comforting, simple, and deeply familiar: cooked rice and potatoes. For many households around the world, these are staples. They are economical, filling, and often prepared in larger batches to be eaten over multiple days. But beneath this everyday convenience lies a subtle microbiological reality that most people never consider. Let's begin with rice. When rice is cooked, a naturally occurring bacterium called Bacillus cereus, which can survive the cooking process in dormant spore form, may remain present. If cooked rice is left at room temperature for too long, these spores can awaken and multiply. More importantly, they can produce heat-stable toxins. Here's the critical point. Reheating the rice may kill the bacteria themselves, but it does not always destroy the toxins they have already produced. This is where the danger becomes invisible. You may not see it, you may not taste it, but your digestive system can feel it, often through symptoms like nausea, vomiting, or gastrointestinal distress. Now extend this principle further to potatoes. Potatoes, when cooked and then left to cool improperly, can also become a breeding ground for bacterial growth, particularly in warm environments. While they are generally safer than rice in terms of toxin production, the combination of time, temperature, and reheating cycles still increases the risk of microbial imbalance and degradation of food quality. What we are really talking about here is not just food safety. We are talking about biological memory. Because food does not simply reset when reheated, it carries a history of how it was stored, how long it sat, and what transformations occurred during that time. Think of it like this. Cooking is not a single event. It is the beginning of a timeline, and refrigeration slows that timeline, but does not erase it. Have you ever reheated rice or potatoes and noticed they feel slightly different in texture, drier, denser, less alive? That's not just culinary change. That's structural degradation at the starch level, combined with microbial and enzymatic shifts. So how do we approach this intelligently without fear? First, treat cooked rice and potatoes as short-life foods. Ideally, they should be cooled quickly after cooking and refrigerated within 1 hour. The faster you reduce their temperature, the more you slow bacterial activity. Second, avoid leaving them at room temperature for extended periods. This is the critical window where Bacillus cereus becomes active. Time is the variable that determines risk. Third, when reheating, do so only once. Repeated reheating increases both microbial uncertainty and nutrient breakdown. Fourth, consider portion planning. Instead of cooking large batches that stretch across multiple days, prepare smaller, more frequent meals. This is not just a safety strategy. It is a way of aligning your diet with freshness, which biologically translates to higher nutrient integrity. Now let's step back for a moment. What we are learning here is not just about rice or potatoes. It's about how life continues to change even after we think we've finished something. In biology, there is rarely a true endpoint, only transitions, and your food is no exception. So ask yourself, are we treating leftovers as static objects or as living systems still in motion? Because when we begin to see food through this lens, dynamic, evolving, time-sensitive, we naturally shift toward more mindful choices. And that shift, subtle as it may seem, is where longevity begins to take shape, not in dramatic interventions, but in quiet awareness, repeated over time. Your body responds not just to what you eat, but to the quality of care behind how you handle it. And that awareness, once developed, changes everything. Let's now move into a category of food that often hides in plain sight because it feels safe by default. Processed meats and ready-to-eat protein products. Think of sausages, deli meats, bacon, and certain packaged protein meals that are already cooked once and then reheated again. On the surface, they appear convenient, even efficient, but biologically, they are already altered before they even need heat a second time. To understand the risk here, we need to zoom in to one of the most important chemical processes in food science, nitrosation. Processed meats often contain nitrates and nitrites added for preservation and color stability. In their stored form, they are relatively stable. But when these foods are reheated, especially at high temperatures such as pan frying or microwaving until sizzling, these compounds can interact with amino acids to form nitrosamines. And nitrosamines are not theoretical concerns. They have been extensively studied for decades. Research from organizations including the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, has classified several nitrosamines as probable carcinogens based on their ability to damage DNA through alkylation processes, essentially interfering with the genetic code that governs cell replication. But let's translate that out of the laboratory and into something more intuitive. Imagine your DNA as a highly precise instruction manual. Every cell in your body relies on it to know when to grow, when to repair, and when to rest. Now imagine small distortions being introduced into that manual, tiny typographical errors that accumulate over time. At first, nothing seems wrong, but over years, those errors can shift the meaning of critical instructions. That is what chronic exposure to DNA reactive compounds does at a biological level. Now, here's where reheating intensifies the issue. Heat acts like an accelerator. It doesn't create the problem from nothing. It amplifies reactions that were already primed in the food matrix. Fat, protein, and preservatives interact under heat to produce compounds that your body must then detoxify through the liver's cytochrome P450 enzyme system. But detoxification is not infinite. It is capacity-based. Have you ever noticed how heavily processed, reheated meals can leave you feeling unusually fatigued? That heaviness is not just digestion, it is metabolic workload. Your body is actively processing chemical stress. So what can we do with this knowledge in practical terms? First, reduce reliance on processed meats that require reheating. The combination of pre-processing and reheating creates a double layer of chemical transformation that increases biological strain. Second, if you do consume them occasionally, avoid high-heat reheating methods. Microwaving gently or incorporating them into freshly prepared dishes without additional cooking can reduce additional chemical stress. Third, consider replacement strategies. Freshly cooked lean proteins such as grilled fish, freshly prepared poultry, legumes, or eggs cooked once provide protein without the same preservative burden. And here is a key longevity principle. The closer food is to its original biological state, the less your body has to interpret and correct, because every correction your body makes is a form of energy expenditure, and energy in biological systems is finite. Now let me ask you something more reflective. How often do we choose convenience without considering the downstream metabolic cost? Because in the modern world, convenience is not free. It is simply paid in a currency we don't immediately see. Cellular stress, inflammatory load, and detoxification demand. But the empowering truth is this: awareness changes the equation. Once you understand the hidden chemistry of reheated processed foods, you are no longer making blind choices. You are making informed ones. And that shift from unconscious habit to conscious design is where true health autonomy begins. If you're finding value in this exploration of food and biology, consider subscribing, because what we are building here is not just information, it is a framework for living in alignment with your long-term health potential. And in that alignment, something powerful happens. You stop reacting to your environment and start shaping it. Now we arrive at a category that feels almost paradoxical in the context of health. Vegetable oils used in frying and reheating cycles, especially in home cooking and restaurant environments. This is where the story of reheating becomes less about individual foods and more about systems. Because unlike a single piece of chicken or a bowl of rice, oils often serve as the medium through which multiple foods are cooked, reheated, and reused. And that repetition creates something science has been quietly warning us about for years: cumulative thermal degradation.